Our featured speaker is Dr. Mildred Jefferson. Dr. Jefferson is no stranger to our functions and meetings. She's been a longtime friend of our organization. She's born and raised in Texas. She attended Harvard Medical School, and we don't hold Harvard graduates against them, even though we should. But more importantly, she was a surgeon for a number of years and served on a number of medical boards. But she is a pioneer in the modern right-to-life movement. She currently serves on over 30 boards of various right-to-life groups, including the Mass Citizens for Life, and all over the country and probably the world. She's been on TV and radio all these years, articulating the message of freedom. I know she was involved with Western Goals, sort of an organization that was set up by the late Congressman Larry McDonald of Georgia. And she is going to be speaking on Obamacare, or whatever we get out of this congressional session. So let's give her a nice warm hand.
Good evening.
Good evening.
It is delightful to see you, so many of whom I have not seen for more than 5 years. I stopped counting at 5. And others I'm grateful for having here because I forgot to call them to tell them exactly where we were and what time we were starting. But they got here anyway, and we are very grateful for their presence. It never matters to me how many people turn up for a particular meeting, because my motto is, no distance is too far, no crowd is too small, as long as one person there gets the message and carries it forward. Because one small idea carried by 1 + 1 + 1 becomes a movement that can change the destiny of nations. And we, in this great United States of ours, should remember more than anyone else the power of the few, the dedicated few. Because without that dedicated few, we would have no nation such as ours founded under God.
Hear, hear.
Now, on some terms, what can be wrong with providing accessible, affordable health care for all Americans? Who could oppose such a thoughtful idea? Who would want people dying in the streets because they didn't have health care? Who would want these mean insurance companies in the United States of America to continue what they're doing, dooming people to die because they're only interested in the dollars that they can bring in? And who would be so backward thinking and so cruel as to want the United States of America and the health care system that has developed over a span of a little more than 200 years to continue leading the world in research, leading the world in getting the very best of care to the largest number of people? Why should the United States of America stand in the forefront of so many things? It hasn't been grateful for its power. It has gone around interfering in the lives and destinies of other countries. It has run around the world trying to play policeman wherever it could. But it needs to be brought down. You can't have one superpower in the world. Ignore the fact that with that one superpower having the kind of control of nuclear weapons that it had, the world has not been bombed out of existence. Can it be that someone has missed something? Can it be that the United States of America, as a free democratic republic with a free market capitalist system, is not the danger to the world? I guess it may be possible. But I'm afraid at least a majority, a leftist majority in the Congress of the United States sees the United States of America as the real enemy of the world. That is about the only reason I can understand for the action taken by a majority of the members of the House of Representatives, our own Congress, for voting to enact a bill on what they call health care reform that will be, I think, the most damaging blow to liberty and freedom ever enacted by a House of our Congress. I think people who have not read it, and I'm sure most of the Congress hasn't, I haven't even had a chance to read it all. All I have is excerpts that people have from different parts of it they have seen. But from those excerpts, the very tone, which is also the tone of one that's been set aside, the former H.R. 3200, it has the harsh, punitive, insulting tone that you always associate with the bureaucracies that are ruled by any of the political factions that end in ism. Everything has a fine, practically, so that those who don't want to participate will be forced to participate. Now, wouldn't you think, if this is such a great blessing for the people of the United States of America, that you could sell it on its own merit? Why should there have to be the compulsory aspects? Why should there be the demand for compulsory aspects of whatever versions they have come up with? Because they know that deep in the character of our people is the quiet mistrust which has been bred by the dishonest representation that the term health care reform has begun to invoke. Because it is very clear that if there were the direct concern for providing every citizen, even those too young to be legal citizens, what would be beneficial for their health and keeping well, that they would not have to have punitive fines and compulsory rules and regulations. But they can't do that because they have never been honest about the reasons for wanting to have government-controlled national health care for the people of the United States of America. I put out a challenge to some of my friends in our different coalitions who have been working in the area of health care provided for citizens without rationing and without including a way of thinning out those who are going to cost too much on the system. I can't grace it with the term euthanasia, because there's no good death about it. You'll notice everything is based on either giving something that's not needed or withholding something that is. If you're not allowed to starve to death or to thirst to death, then you may be given something that will help you along by depressing your respirations or your cough reflex so you can die quietly behind the door, relieving the rolls of the cost of taking care of you, without really having to acknowledge that it was done. And no one at whatever level of government can assure you that there won't be any death panels for removing grandma. They didn't mention grandpa, but he would be there too if he were around. Because they don't believe that we have either any memories or any common sense. We happen to know what the people who have been appointed to the critical jobs in this administration were doing either in the jobs they had before or in the lower levels from which they were removed. We know what they advocated in the administration of their offices. And we know the higher they rise and the more power they get to enforce these destructive ideas, they certainly will take advantage of doing so. What in particular am I thinking of? We're always told that here in the United States of America, we pay more for health care than anybody else in the world, and still we rank 17th in deaths from this and 19th in deaths from that. But they also ignore telling you we spend more for everything else than other people do. We spend over $1 billion a year for nail care, haircuts, cosmetics. Do they want to live on the same economy of the people they are suggesting to us when they mention the countries that have the nationalized healthcare systems? And the challenge that I laid out to the experts in our coalition organizations, and some that aren't, is an observation that I have made over time. And I say over time because I have been involved in the process of trying to become a doctor of medicine, trying to become a board-certified surgeon, and trying to maintain my standing in the profession over the years that I no longer count. And no, I'm not retired, but I am on a kind of extended sabbatical because I oppose the merger of Boston University Medical Center and Boston City Hospital. And Boston University Medical Center went forward without me, without letting me determine whether I wanted to be part of it. And that's how I began this enforced and overly long sabbatical. But I'll let you in on a little secret. I'm not going to practice surgery with my decisions controlled and dictated either by an insurance company clerk or government clerk. So I don't know. I may be on sabbatical forever. But unfortunately, that doesn't mean without activity, because I will want you to follow what example I have tried to live. This is a battle for the future of our nation, and therefore the destiny of the world depends on the outcome, because we are the only and last hope for people who really want to live in freedom. So we cannot afford to let them take that freedom away. And when they, by a vote, of 222-215 on Saturday morning put a stamp of approval on House Bill 3962, that action which I referred to before as the most damaging, if it were ever enacted, stroke against the survival of a free democratic republic, was taken by that action because one branch of government undertook to deprive us, average citizens, of our civil liberties and our civil rights in one fell swoop. And if every provision in that legislation could be enacted into law, we would be a plainclothes police state. A plainclothes police state. That would be the only difference between the changes in our general laws and activities from the communist or socialist governments that have uniformed police watching the actions of the people. One of the things that I've not had a chance to review these new versions to find out if, as in H.R. 3200, the monitoring and the prosecutions would be done by an existing branch of government. I don't even at this evening go into that mushrooming chart that shows the number of new agencies that would have to be created for our government to manage this new bureaucratic obligation. But just looking at having the IRS and its civil procedures monitoring every aspect of your life, even more than it can now, and to be the one determining whether you were in compliance or not, and whether you were in violation or not, when the process enables them to consider you guilty until your innocence is proved. Guilty until your innocence is proved. I, who have always tried to live within the law and obey the law, could wind up spending my last days in prison because I do not want to be part of their planning for accessible, affordable care to all Americans. I don't want to be one of the ones they are providing for. I don't want to see this country become a nation of hypochondriacs with their particular hypochondriases generally controlled and almost assigned by government intervention. I do not want to be part of a system that forces me to participate. I do not plan to go out spreading illness. I do not plan to go out undermining my body. I do not plan to do anything that will be harmful in terms of ingestion of noxious substances or maiming myself. But I don't need a government supervisor to keep me from doing it. And I know there are many people with whatever problems they have had in their lives. They say, oh, well, what is all this liberty and freedom to me? I can't do this and I can't do that. But you have the freedom to do it if you can find a way of doing it. And no one ever seems to stop to think. They have used deception in playing on the fears and anxieties and uncertainties and the anguish of many people who have had problems with getting appropriate health care. They also ignore the fact that some of those who are able to afford the very best may not sometimes end up with it. That's a problem too. But that is not the principal problem of health care and its distribution, and most of it is illness care, not health care, in our United States of America. I have not analyzed the full path of things, but I was extremely distressed to have the American Medical Association joining with AARP to support the administration's notion of health care reform. Because I don't consider that you could possibly create sensible, effective, or appropriate reform when you have not made an appropriate analysis of the system to come up with exactly what is wrong with it. And not having come up with exactly what is wrong with it, why are you coming up with solutions of what you propose to do about it? That makes as much sense as if you came to me with the pain in your wrist and said, I think there's something wrong with it. Would you mind examining it and putting me through a few tests to see what is wrong? And I looked at you and said, well, I'm not sure the rest of you is sound. And I don't really think I should do anything about this arm or wrist until I know whether or not the rest of you is worthwhile or in proper condition. So, since I don't know, I think I will make a decision that there's something wrong with you, and then I will undertake to do what I think will correct you. You wouldn't be happy with that. If you were having a reunion of your family and you invited the 450 that you could find and sent out the emails or however you wanted to notify them, and to your dismay, instead of 450 responding, 1,450 responded. And they said they were all coming, and you cannot accommodate more than 500. So since you can't, instead of putting them in hotels and whatever and having friends take them in, you decide you're going to blow up your whole house and start all over again because you can't accommodate the extra 1,000 that are coming. To me, that's what they've done with regard to looking at the healthcare system in the United States. And because it's not the socialist system of England or Canada, and because it's not like any of the other state plans in Spain or some of the other places, got to get rid of it. Got to do something else. Start with false conclusions. Start with false premises. Well, I hope you're not, well, you did start with conclusions. I don't know where you can go when you start with a conclusion, but I don't think you're going to come up with anything very beneficial. And so far, everything they have come up with, I see, would leave the whole healthcare system worse. You will notice that when Queen Elizabeth had a very serious medical problem, she did not go to her state system. She put her interior into the private system. And you will notice that even Canada is sending patients to the United States. I know that many of people are telling you, especially when they forget what a medically sophisticated population we have in general, that people don't really need the last minute treatment. They don't need the most advanced. They would do perfectly well with something that's worked well always. Try telling the person that who does have the knowledge and the information. They wouldn't accept it. They wouldn't accept most of the things that people in other countries accept just because their society has generally required them to be more accepting. I would like every person in our country who does not want to live under a police state, plainclothes police state, to notify that 220 members of the Congress of the United States that you are concerned about what kind of citizens they are and what kind of Americans that they are, that they would be willing to forfeit our civil liberties and our civil rights and our ability to live in a free country, making the decisions regarding our lives for ourselves. Because I want to ask each one of them that. I have seen a brief blurb, in fact, in today's news, that the Republican congressman from the 9th District of Louisiana, who has an Asian name, voted for this bill because his constituents wanted him to vote that way. That in itself is complimentary, but having to do so is unfortunate. And I certainly am going to get to all of my contacts in Louisiana, at least in that part of New Orleans, to find out if they can get information to those constituents, because those poor people have been misled. They have some idea that by voting for this, it's going to enable them to have this paradise of health care. It's going to enable them to have all of the things that they have been promised, and no system could ever provide everything that they are promising in the legislation. No country could ever afford what they are promising in the legislation. Somebody has to pay for everything, and they may think they'll be able to tax the rich enough to pay for it, but they may not necessarily get away with that, because so far, even those called the rich still have civil and constitutional rights, and trying to create a taxation directed only at a certain few, I think is going to come into certain constitutional challenges. Now, fair disclosure is required here. I am not now, nor have I ever been, a millionaire or a billionaire. So that my defense of the free market capitalist system as the economy for our free democratic republican country is purely a matter of appreciation and commitment and conviction. I have nothing to defend with regard to my fortune. But I want the people of the future to have a future at least as good as our past.
Wow.
As I look at all of these people in the highest levels of the administration, I'm speaking now of the elected representatives, and the arguments that they have made for this push for a nationalized health system. Oh, I know they deny it. With everything they say, you can presume that the objective and the goal is the very opposite of what they are declaring.
Right.
The one word they don't want you to remember or to use is socialism, because they know that down on the very bottom of the grassroots of the citizens of our country, They don't want an ism. But as long as you don't call it by its name, you perhaps can get them to accept anything. And they know that because the current axis that is running the world, and that is an axis that General Eisenhower never dreamed of. He was concerned about the military-industrial complex, but he had no inkling of the far more dangerous Hollywood entertainment industry Madison Avenue complex that's currently in control of the world and its decisions, because their key is marketing and behavior control. And the distraction in our country today of the debate on how we will get health care to the people of this country has changed the arguments so that the objectives of those who are driving for a government-controlled system are obscured. The challenge that I referred to you, or to before to you, the one that I've asked my friends who've been researching this area of healthcare provision for so many years is this. In the Western world, wherever you have found nationalized health schemes, they have always been instituted by 20th century governments controlled by people using outmoded 19th century socialist notions. Why on earth do they want that for 21st century citizens of the United States of America? Everything that they call progressive is regressive. And I don't want to go backward to what they want our country to be. I want this great land of ours to be able to move forward. I don't want it destroyed by the elitist population control philosophies that are driving the decisions of the administration that is currently there. I don't know if you have noticed it. Perhaps you don't have the right kind of transmission to see it, but flying from atop the White House is the population control flag. And you will notice that in many aspects of both the House Bill 3962 and the Senate 1796, that you have the elements of population control driving the recommendations that are in the bill. I don't know exactly what governs the motivations of people. I will even give those who are behind this some little bit of room for maybe having some kind of concern about the people and their health care. But I know throughout history, the focus on health care by all of the fascist, socialist, or communist governments is because that has been the one way of controlling and knowing how to control every element of that society.
Wow.
And there is no way you can ever convince me that when it's pushed for land like ours, where that approach is so unnecessary, that the end objective has to be the one that has prevailed over time. So I ask you, in joining me in the commitment to pledge again, even though we did not say the Pledge of Allegiance to our flag, which I am wearing, I still know that no country under the sun would provide for me the opportunity that my own United States of America has. And I could say that to the President of the United States if I ever had a chance to talk with him. It doesn't matter where he visited with his mother. It doesn't matter where he lived. Not one of the socialist countries whose models he is trying to copy would have provided for him the opportunity he has found here, and would not have provided him the opportunity to be their president. So our mission is clear: defending our own United States of America, defending our own flag of the United States of America, and the republic for which it stands. But we know that we, as individual free citizens in a free country, have the obligation to pay for that freedom with responsibility and fighting the battles that must be fought. And since we have obligations, we're not only defending, as the Right to Life movement that I represent, that foundation and cornerstone of the Republic, but we are also fighting to defend the Judeo-Christian moral tradition as the basis of the laws and customs of this country. So that means no matter how tired the fingers are, if you are in cyberspace, you get that email to your members of Congress letting them know that you will never accept having us under the control of plainclothes police. And let them know that you want some of the harsh and punitive compulsory language removed from anything that comes to our people. Let them know you don't want to step backward toward the outmoded approaches to health care planning, when with the technology we have here in the United States today, we can develop plans that cover everyone for what they need without providing what they don't need and someone else would just like to force upon them. And just one simple plea, that the members of the Congress of the United States do remember they are to represent the people and not to deprive the people of even their legal rights to defend what they believe in. Here in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, in that vote, we have only 2 members that remembered both life and the defense of life and conscience. And those are Representative Steve Lynch from our end of the state and Representative Richie Neal from the western end of the state. And even though I don't often encourage people to write to representatives outside their district, I hope everyone who appreciated their willingness to go at least that far against the prevailing caucus, that it is greatly appreciated. And I have to tell you a little story about Representative Steve Lynch. I don't know how many of you remember years ago there was a front page story in the Boston papers about a youth who defended his country's flag with his fists on City Hall Plaza. Well, I was so impressed seeing this youth in that photograph. Not only did I clip the picture from the paper, but I kept it, but I also remembered his name. But, you know, you don't really follow people that you just happen to see once in the papers. But after Senator Bulger had left and there was the scramble to change the order of representation from South Boston, electing someone from the House to the House and then someone to the Senate, I came in on one of the early debates for the special election to fill the House seat that had been opened. And I got in too late to hear the speaker, who was just starting, introduced. But I only had to listen to him for 30 seconds to know that was someone special who could go the distance and very likely would represent what we believed in. And then at the end, I heard the name, and I could not believe it. The name I heard was Steve Lynch. That was the name of this valiant teenager that had gone to defend his nation's flag with his fists on City Hall Plaza. And I must admit, when I had seen that picture those years ago, I had bonded that youth to my heart with bands of steel. So that you can believe that I will certainly do everything within any reach that I can make to help support him and give him the courage to go against the destructive bent of our Massachusetts delegation. One other thing I would like to remind you of. With this push of our country left by the leftist majority in the Congress of the United States, don't close your eyes to the fact that most of them have benefited by every benefit that a free market capitalist system could give them. Nancy Pelosi is not a poor girl. Senator Ted Kennedy was not a poor boy. He was able to spend 47 years in the Senate of the United States because he had a multimillionaire father whose opportunity of becoming a multimillionaire came from this free market capitalist system, which enabled him to do that. And however much you may respect whatever Senator Kennedy accomplished that you agree with, you cannot close your eyes to the fact that his dream was not the dream of a free market democratic Republican system. He did not have the same foundation political philosophy of his brothers John and Robert, and he was so far from his father's basic philosophy. I'm sure he himself is still puzzled, the father, at how that happened. But that is what I would like to remind all of these people in the Congress who are trying to destroy our system, that it is not something that we intend to help them do. I don't mind being ridiculed as a flag-waving patriot. I don't mind that at all. And most of the time you will see some reminder of that. If it's only just a little pin, or maybe just a red, white, and blue scarf. Because I am truly grateful for being born in this land of the free and the home of those who I hope will continue to remember to be brave.